Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing great. I would like to welcome you all to today's USA event on Leaders' Intent, the key to aligning OKRs. On behalf of Agile People Ops, me, Mariana, your host, would like to thank you all for taking out your precious time and joining us today. I would now like to introduce our USA country ambassador and speaker for today, Vincent Harris. Vincent is an Agile coach and consultant with a seasoned background in HR and talent acquisition. He has a passion for driving the adoption of lean agile principles and practices in the people ops space. Vincent's work is guided by the first agile value: individuals and interactions are greater than processes and tools. Vincent is an avid learner. He holds the SAFE program consultant, certified project trainer, ICP agile coaching, and OKR coaching professional certifications, among other credentials. Welcome, Vincent. The stage is all yours.
All right. Thank you so much for that introduction, Mariana. It's a pleasure to finally be here. I owe some of us an apology. My previous date, it did not go well for me. We ended up having to postpone. And yeah, it was a time zone issue on my calendar, and that was my miss, but we are here now, and I'm glad to have you all. Today, we're going to be discussing two things together and these are two things that I believe really that can be powerful for organizations when, combined and integrated and, set properly. And that is firstly, leaders' intent, but also OKRs. Now, before I kick things off, for OKRs, we actually, maybe, I don't know, about 9 months or so ago, had a really cool presentation here under Agile People Ops. And I'm going to share the link to that. You can bear with me for just a second. And yes, that was with Kate Madison.
She's on call right now.
Okay. Oh yeah, I do see Kate's name. I'm sorry. I'd be remiss not to acknowledge that Kate's here. Thank you so much. I'm actually sharing a link to your video there, Kate. Did you want to chime in real quick? I saw you came on camera.
Hi, Vincent. Oh, that was unexpected. Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. No, I had watched that video and it was very intriguing. Just wanted to share it. I think others might, find it to be helpful as well. But being as though we've already covered OKRs under this umbrella, for those that might not be as familiar with OKRs or just wanted to brush up or even see, Kate's take, I do highly recommend watching that video. She did a great job of, really introducing the framework and, just, all the bits and pieces, the basic components and, really good foundational information about OKRs. So yeah, just nod to Kate real quick there and then getting into what we have. So I am going to share my screen. I'm also going to, you're actually seeing my work that I'm doing as we are doing all of this. Now, if I can find my share screen, bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to drop it in the chat, our link. So this is the link to my mural that you're seeing here. And I'm just going to wait a moment for folks to join. Now, if you cannot join or don't want to, that's totally fine. But Mural is an interactive digital whiteboard. It's a very powerful tool. If we were not recording this today, I would not display it and I'd require everyone to join it. But for this presentation, being as though it's technically a webinar, I'll spare us, the requirement to join. But if you can, by all means, join the mural, and I'll just give us maybe like 10 more seconds to do that. And while you're joining, if you can, you'll see our title more properly laid out here. It's Leaders' Intent, the key to aligning OKRs. The key to aligning OKRs. The first question that I want to ask, and with me asking that question, or asking this question rather, if you're in the mural, if you double click anywhere in this space, if you double click in that space, yes, it will register a sticky note and you can type into that sticky note. So I'm going to start with the question, why is it important for organizations to set goals? Very high level question. By organization, we mean that could be a company, that could be your team, that could be at the program level, department level, whatever the case, however you contextualize it in your mind. But just responses to that very general question. Again, why is it important for organizations to set goals? Your thoughts, your opinion. If you cannot use Mural, you can do it in the group chat. But this gives us sort of a better visual. So I'm going to give us, let's take another minute. I'll say 2. We'll take 2 minutes. 2 minutes to answer that question. Another minute and 30 seconds.
In case people are struggling, I've put a couple of spare ones up there that people
Cool,
can...
thank you. Much appreciated. Oh, thank you for that, Lucas. I usually like to play music during these gaps, but I don't know if Zoom is my best friend today. Kate said she can sing. All right, taking another 40 seconds. Why is it important for organizations to set goals? There's no right or wrong answers here, just your answers, your responses. Another 20 seconds. Not seeing any more response. Oh, there's some typing. All right. So whoever might still be typing, that's perfectly fine. We're going to hear the bell in a moment. You can keep typing while we talk through it. All right. So I'm going to go to the chat first and kind of read through these. What do we have from the top? I'm seeing Lucas with okay, well, he did say that he can't join Mural, but also it's important for measuring success and find out what needs to be improved. I wholly agree. Thank you to Jennifer, who says to ensure everyone is working towards an objective and measure progress. Also great, spot on. To direct our efforts to achieve results from Kaveri, and I do hope that I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If not, feel free to correct me. Annie, for increased, I'm tongue-tied today, for her increased efficiency and help to keep people accountable. That is huge, accountability. And that's probably going to play a part into some of our talk today. And let's see, we have, it helps achieve the organization's objectives, which is awesome. And that one, it looks like, let's see, who is joining us as MH? I'm not looking at the folks here. I have also can't join, but gives directions, goals, provide a sense of purpose and direction, helping everyone work towards the same goal. And here on the screen, to give clarity on what is expected, to measure progress, and to hold people accountable. There's that accountability again. That must be important when it comes to setting goals. Let's hold on to that thought. Now, I am going to, as a matter of fact, let me do this. Again, you all are seeing some of my work. All right, so it does take leadership, but I think this presentation is going to be a little bit heavier on the leadership side. So going into this, I want us to think like we might or might not be familiar with this concept called leader's intent. We might not also be familiar with OKRs, but we are familiar with the idea of leadership, right? Everyone knows about leadership and what that is and has their own ideas as to what it means. But I think collectively, there's some basic understanding. Leadership is influence, right? In the words of John Maxwell, if there's a synonym for leadership, it's probably influence. And sometimes that influence is positive, sometimes it's negative. So there's positive leadership, there's negative leadership. And obviously, and quite naturally, I think we're all on the same page when I say that we're talking about positive leadership here. And OKRs, that's objectives and key results. We'll define, describe, and explain those in a moment. But I think we all might not, again, understand or know what OKRs are, but obviously just based on that last activity, we all know what it means to set goals. We all understand what goals are and why they're important to organizations. So I'm going to approach this first very generically, again, to say that we're talking about two things at a very foundational level, right? With leader's intent, we're still just talking about leadership. With OKRs, we're talking about goals and objectives. We're talking about strategy, right? And how do we bridge these two ideas together? But for the sake of conversation, just a little bit heavier on leadership. But I'm going to start out by talking to you about OKRs. Before we do, I want to dig into the basics of goals. So what you're seeing on the screen, this is something that I believe and I think holds true when you really think about it, because we use these two terms, goals and objectives, interchangeably. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. They are somewhat synonymous. Goals and objectives in our common language, we use them to be generally the same. But on a very granular level, there is a distinct difference between goals and objectives, okay? Goals are meant to lead to a realization. So when we set a goal, we're thinking forward, right? We're thinking about something that we at least hope to realize at some point in the future. Whether it's a short-term goal or a long-term goal, a goal is the nature of a goal is realization, okay? An objective is or has intention, right? Objectives are intentional and therefore they are actionable. So goals speak to the future, objectives speak to the now, something that we are doing or will be doing in the very immediate future, right? So goals, again, this is in the bold, the goal is to get there. This is kind of like my personal saying. The goal is to get there. The objective is to go there. So the goal is to get there, get like meaning in the future. It's a realization for the future. The objective is to go there, meaning we're speaking with intention, and the intention is to put forth action. So that is the distinction between goals and objectives. Just wanted to kind of clear some of the language first before we go any further. Now that we're there, we can talk a little bit about OKRs. So what are OKRs? I did drop a link in the chat earlier for Kate's presentation. Again, highly recommended. I think she did an excellent job of walking through what OKRs are and how they can be implemented in your organization. But because we're going to be a little bit heavier on the leadership, I'm going to lean on her in that video and you all watching it to get a little bit more of the basics. Again, if you're not familiar or if you just want a refresher, or if you're interested in, watching Kate's video in general. But for those purposes today, what are OKRs? I like this graphic. I found it online from Purdue. It distinguishes OKRs and KPIs, but also kind of gives you an idea of how they work together, especially since a lot of people are familiar with KPIs and might not be as familiar with OKRs. Again, OKR is an acronym, objectives and key results, as is KPIs, key performance indicators. So when we think about it, KPIs is everything down here. If you're driving, the KPIs are your dashboard. It's the controls. It's telling you how efficient you are. It's telling you how well your engine is operating, just like a dashboard does in a car. In fact, a lot of times, what do we call our whatever spreadsheet or screen that we're using to display KPIs? We call it a KPI dashboard, just like in your car. Objectives and key results are the journey, right? They're the journey. Or you might even think of setting KPIs as like, outlining your journey on a map. So OKR set the course. KPIs are you monitoring how well you're doing on the journey, right? Do I have enough fuel? Do I have battery power? How fast are we going? Or how slow are we going, right? Just the opposite. And any other monitors or controls you have on that dashboard. But the OKRs are the journey. Now, getting a little bit more specific with OKRs, they are a system, and I'm very intentional about using this word here, a system for planning, managing, and monitoring goals. And if I could edit this right now, just thinking on the spot, I would even add a system for planning, managing, monitoring, and cultivating a culture for not only goals, but for people, right? So this concept, this framework, this system called OKRs comes from a gentleman named John Doerr, who is a thought leader in the tech space, in organizational management and strategy. And I'm not going to get too far into it because he does have a book, and I have it somewhere on my desk, but it's one of my personal, still here, but it's one, if you all can see it, it's one of my personal favorites. So I keep it here on my desktop. That's Measure What Matters. If you're not familiar, I highly recommend the book, not just for OKRs, but just generally understanding the importance of goals in organizations, how you can empower organizations with actionable goals and objectives and what have you. Now, if I could change the title of this book, it wouldn't be Measure What Matters. It's not about measuring necessarily. and don't hear me wrong, it's not to say that measuring isn't important. However, there's a saying also by John Maxwell, and I think it's that what isn't measurable isn't manageable, right? And that's something for us to write down if you're one of those folks who likes to take notes during these webinars. If it ain't measurable, it ain't manageable. But in order for something to be manageable, it has to be actionable, right? So with that in mind, if I were to rewrite this title, it would be Doing What Matters. So if you happen to read this book, you'll notice, yeah, measuring is a big part of it, but it's really about doing, right? And how do we motivate and inspire organizations to do something? Well, through goals and technically objectives, but in the general sense, through goals. It's simple psychology. By setting goals, you are almost inherently motivating yourself or motivating people to do something and get it done. It's one thing just to say you're going to do something. It's another thing to set a goal. It's another thing entirely to act on it. And then from there to look back, to work iteratively, and with retrospective and reviewing your actions and taking further action to improve on it by setting new goals, taking new action, and so forth and so on down the line, iterating along the way. So why OKRs? Well, for one, they empower organizations to measure what matters, to focus on the things that matter most, right? We're prioritizing, to align organizations according to what matters, and also communicating what matters. And if I were to add another bullet right here, right now, would probably be doing what matters. And I would bold that and underline it and put like a series of exclamation marks after it. So it's all about acting with intention, about doing, and creating a culture that's intentional, that knows what needs to be done, that understands the mission and the purpose, the why behind that. And it's all of that. It's empowering organizations and creating a culture of positive leadership and strategy and all those good things we talk about all the time. So, seeing something on my screen. I don't know what this is, but that's going to irk me, but it's okay as long as we can all see. So I want to give an example, and I'm kind of jumping and skipping a little bit. You can fill in the gaps again by looking at that YouTube video link that I sent earlier. But for those who might not be as familiar with OKRs, we've talked about what they are. Well, what do they look like? So objective, using an NBA team as an example here. Very simple. Win the NBA championships. It's very short, very brief, concise, straight to the point. The higher level goal here is to win the NBA championship. And I'm sure, you can fill in this gap with any soccer team, right? Football team, any, right now the Olympics is going. You can put in win an Olympic medal, and that would be an objective, right? Or a higher level goal in a sense. So the objective here is to win the NBA championships. Key results. So these key results are saying if we achieve these things down here, then we should secure that NBA championship. So the key results are achieve a win rate of at least 75% during the regular season. So we want to have a winning record, secure a top 3 seed position in the playoffs. We want to be highly ranked going into the playoffs, maintain an average point differential of 10, plus 10 per game, and also ensure all starting players at least 90% of the games building a team cohesion. So you can attribute all of these different key results to different players or different departments in the team's administration or the coaches. Different groups or different individuals can own these key results. But at a high level, these are like the strategic, this would be like the strategic OKR that would drive the team to win the NBA championships. Now, let's scale that to our context, because a lot of us here, this is Agile People Ops Framework. A lot of us work in, we might, work in HR or, payroll or something. We might work in an Agile environment, right? So with an HR team, as an example, an objective might be to enhance employee engagement and satisfaction with the following key results: increase employee engagement, achieve minimum employee satisfaction score, and so on. Now, a few things I want to point out here as we're moving further. Again, that objective is short, it's concise. The key results, you'll notice with them, one thing. Now you're seeing numbers. We're adding metrics or measurements to the fold here. You'll also notice that the key results, much like the objectives, but it is sort of a rule of thumb with key results that they begin with an action verb, right? These verbs like increase or reduce, achieve, implement, those terms are action verbs that motivate us because they show action. It shows that we're doing something. But I also want to point this out. And oftentimes, as somewhat of an OKR coach, people tend to miss this. OKRs they're not only goals, but they are a hypothesis, right? Meaning, just like in scientific method, if we're thinking back to our fifth grade, sixth grade, our elementary years when we're learning about running science experiments, and you start with a problem, right? From that problem, you form a hypothesis. Based on that hypothesis, you're going to test it by experimenting. And then you're going to look at the results of the experiment. OKRs are no different. They're driven by experimentation. Why? Because none of this has happened yet. So this is a hypothesis. And that hypothesis is structured this way. The key results form an if statement. So we're saying if we accomplish these key results, in other words, if we do these things down here, then we'll accomplish that thing up here. So again, if we achieve these lower level objectives that you're seeing as key results collectively, then we will achieve this higher level objective at the top. So it's a hypothesis. And when we engage in the action for this hypothesis, we're now running an experiment. And at the conclusion of that experiment, we're going to look back retrospectively and see whether or not we did in fact achieve this higher level objective of enhancing employee engagement and satisfaction. Or in the case of our previous example, did we win the NBA championship? Yes or no? Why or why not? And then you can even add your retro questions. Well, what went wrong? What did we do right? What did we do wrong? What can we do better? How can we improve? And any other questions you want to add to that. But it's experimental, right? And experimentation requires what? Again, action. Now, there's generally two approaches to taking that action. from a leadership standpoint, from a strategic standpoint, that is. So there's two general, there's many, but generally speaking, there's two strategic approaches to OKRs. And one of them is cascading. What do we mean by cascading? Is just like with a waterfall where, the water comes down from the top to the bottom, it flows downward, right? Just think of, you have a set of stairs and there's water coming from top to bottom. It's cascading down the steps or the stairway, right? So that's what we do with cascading OKRs. The OKRs move from top to bottom. So that means that the enterprise level OKR, the next level down, will take one of their key results as their objective. The next level down will take one of their key results as their objective. And the next level will take one of their key results as their objective. And it's going to go down and down and down in a series of borrowing key results for objectives. So if I can rewind, that would mean that, for example, let's say that this is a strategic OKR for an entire HR department, then that would mean that maybe I'm just going to make it up on the spot. Maybe there's an HR team called the employee engagement team. That means that the employee engagement team would take this key result and it now becomes their objective. And from that objective, they're going to add maybe 3 to 5 other key results. So that's cascading. It's taking a top-down approach. This is very command and control based. There's not a whole lot of flexibility because remember, you're mandated to borrow an OKR and use it as your objective. The other general approach, strategic approach to implementing OKRs is called aligning OKRs. It's a lot more flexible. So in this case, you're not borrowing, you are knowing and understanding what the enterprise strategic OKRs are and any other levels in between. And you're taking that, you're contextualizing it, and you're making it your own. Why is this important? Well, in your team or in your program, whatever level you're at in your work or whatever team you work on in you listening to me right now, your work environment, your work culture, you know it best or better than anyone else in your organization. So you, under this approach, you're empowered to contextualize and write your own objectives and OKRs. There's not necessarily a mandate. There is a shared understanding within the organization where everyone knows what the mission is. We understand what the vision is. We understand the strategic goals and objectives. We know the direction of the company. We have a clear and shared understanding of the overall strategy and culture. And with that, we're gleaning that into our own OKRs. So there's no mandate. We're not, in the HR department and we know that the next level up, or maybe our HR executive at the top is saying, okay, this is your objective or this is your OKR for that team. And this is the objectives and OKRs for the next team. It's us given the liberty and the creativity and flexibility to write our own because we're empowered and we know, we understand, and we're the experts within our given work context. Nobody knows us better than us. So we've talked about our two general approaches. Again, there's cascading and there is aligning. What I'd like to hear from us, and I'm going to move out of presentation mode for a second so you can do it. the question that you see here. So between these two approaches for implementing OKRs, which do you prefer? Aligning or cascading OKRs? So here, you can populate your sticky note by double clicking anywhere on this, this screen that you're seeing and answer that question. Or if you cannot, you can use the chat. I'm going to set my timer for 2 minutes, and you all can go ahead and start answering that question.
Walk around any barrio and you'll find
Right, we get some music with 1 minute meaning. Again, the question, we went over the two approaches, aligning and cascading. Between the two, which do you feel, just based on your opinion, what you know, what you've experienced, which of these is the ideal approach, in your opinion? Now, 20 seconds. You can't do it in mural. Check. All right. Thank you for that. And I do see some messages. Folks are saying aligning. I see a lot of aligning in the chat. It looks like, okay, so there's something. I'm going to zoom in here. And I'm guessing this is probably from, is this from Kate? Not sure. Let me know in the chat. And Lucas says, oh, ideal approach, I believe it would be depending on the situation and the goal. I really like that. Now, from me, ideally, it would be aligning, but it is a matter of like, how do we get there? So seeing this message here on the screen, to get the aligning approach is fabulous. It can often be overwhelming for teams to go straight there. A top-down approach can be a good segue. Yes, so cascading can be, it can be a bridge to help us to get there, to build that context first, and to understand how to not only draft your OKRs, but to contextualize them. So you have to start somewhere. Really depends on the team. But overall, the goal is to get to where you are able to sort of localize and contextualize your team's OKRs, right? So where you're empowered and the culture is there and there's shared understanding and clear expectations about the mission, vision, and purpose, strategic goals from top to bottom, and also horizontally across the organization, because the 21st century organization is very collaborative. At least the most successful organizations are. And with that, cross-functional teams, we require that horizontal shared understanding, which sometimes creates complexity. But I think OKRs, that's maybe a future topic, but how might we leverage OKRs for shared understanding across an organization. I'm going to hold on to that one. But generally speaking, it sounds like most of us see that aligning OKRs approach as the ideal. All right, I'm going to, whoop, my screen is sticking. I'm going to get us back to there. All right. So David Marquette is an author of a book called Intent-Based Leadership. This book is based, I have not read it, but if you look him up, I wish I would have thought to share one of the links to his videos. He has a couple of very powerful, very popular talks on YouTube and throughout social media. But David Marquette wrote that book, Intent-Based Leadership, and it is based heavily, as far as I know, on his experience as an officer in the U.S. Navy. He has a history, even starting out as a child, with an interest in the subject of leadership. Anyway, when he became a naval officer, at one point he was assigned to a submarine, and he did not have submarine experience. It just so happened that this submarine was 6 months out from a critical inspection. Now, if anyone here is familiar with submarines, these are massive machines. They are highly technical. You know, there's thousands of people involved in the operation of just one submarine, and it is a huge undertaking. So this particular submarine was bound to fail this inspection, and he doesn't know really anything about leading a submarine, or even, you know, the culture of one, the operation, the technical aspects. He's way far behind. So in the military, there is a culture of command and control. It tends to be very hierarchical. Now, I will say, in a lot of our militaries, they tend to be very agile as well. But there's a traditional form of leadership that David Marquette encountered and initially adopted, and that was to instruct and direct and give out orders. In other words, tell people what to do, and they'll do it, and that'll get it done. So initially, he takes that approach. Keeping in mind, he has 6 months, only 6 months, to pass this critical inspection of a submarine, of which he doesn't have much knowledge or experience or context of leading one. So he's telling people what to do. He's getting mentorship from other officers with experience, and they're advising him to instruct people and tell them what needs to be done, and they'll act, they'll get it done. And very early on, he's seeing that that's not working. They're not making progress. So what does he do? He stops giving out instructions, and he empowers people, because number one, he doesn't know what to do, and they do, but he's the leader. So he has to facilitate a culture of leadership that's going to empower people based on their knowledge, their experience, their expertise. Because if he doesn't rely on them, it won't get done. But if they don't have him as a leader, the same is true. Notice this quote. Mr. Marquette says, if you want people to think, give them intent, not instruction. Now, this goes back to maybe my second or third slide in this deck. Objectives are based on intent, right? So OKRs consist of higher level objectives complemented by lower level objectives. So OKRs by nature in their structure and their wording, their phrasing alone are intent-based. So there's already an intent-based leadership nature of objectives and key results. So if you want people to think, give them intent, not instruction. And if I were to modify this statement, I would say if you want people to be empowered, give them intent, not instruction. Don't tell them what to do, guide them. Give them some context, give them direction in the sense of them understanding the mission and the vision and the overall strategy, and provide the resources, give them space and flexibility. And with that, you have intent-based leadership. The key here is that alignment, efficiency, agility requires intent, not instruction, not orders, not mandates, but intent. One of the things that Mr. Marquette implemented on his submarine is this this sentence starter, I'll call it. I intend to. So Mr. Marquette would say, or the people under his leadership, when they approached him with a request or some action, they would start it with, I intend to. So it would be something like, sir, I intend to lower the submarine. And he would respond with maybe a question or maybe some guidance like, okay, before you lower the sub, make sure that X, Y, and Z is in place. I mean, I've never been on a submarine, so I don't know what that might look like, but I think you get the point. He's creating a culture by, for one, implementing a language, which is important. We'll talk a bit about that in just a few moments, but also making the intent intentional by saying it. I intend to. This is the action that I intend to assume. This is something that we intend to do, or an action that we intend to take. It's not you do this or you do that. It's we intend to do whatever it is we're planning or intending to do. All right. So what does that, let me get my screen adjusted here. What does that have to do with OKRs? I think we've already kind of established that, at least lightly. The fact that OKRs, because they are objectives, their nature is objective, right? Their nature is intentional. They speak with intent. But there's a few things that I'm going to outline for us that kind of bridge these two concepts together. This concept of OKRs as a management framework and system, a human system, and leaders' intent as a very humanistic and flexible approach to leadership, right? So leaders' intent is a leadership concept and strategy that empowers leaders and everyone who's being led to be self-led, to be autonomous and empowered, to make decisions and act on them for the overall benefit of the organization, leading to positive outcomes for the organization and its people, and even more so the folks that they're serving, their customers. So there's a few sort of pillars that bring this idea of leaders' intent and OKRs together. So with leaders' intent, again, it's an approach, a concept based on clear communication and strategy, and aligning people to the vision and purpose of the organization. And OKRs, more specifically, aligning OKRs, is that flexibility, that transparency, that localization and contextualization approach to OKRs versus, the top-down approach. So what do we need in order to integrate leaders' intent and OKRs? We need clear vision and context, right? So you need to clearly communicate and articulate the overall mission, the strategy. I've been saying that over the last few slides, but that is critical to OKRs, because while that flexibility and that autonomy should be there for teams to do what they know how to do best, they need strategic vision and direction. They can't do what they're able to do without that local context, but also without the higher context of the strategic vision. So they have to know where the ship is going. Just like we saw that the dashboard earlier, looking out the windshield is looking at the OKRs, knowing the direction that we're moving in. And that's how the two work hand in hand. Leaders' intent is it being communicated and empowered. OKRs are looking out the windshield and seeing, or out the ship and seeing the direction that we're moving in. So empowerment and autonomy. Leaders' intent empowers teams by giving them that freedom and flexibility that we've been speaking of. And OKRs encourages teams to set their own key results and define the steps needed to meet their objectives. Our next pillar is adaptiveness and responsiveness, right? That ability to be able to adapt and adjust and move accordingly. So with leaders' intent, it prepares teams to adapt by changing circumstances, by understanding the underlying purpose and end goals. And OKRs give us that flexibility to adjust their OKRs as needed, right? So we don't want to keep them static because they're going to change over time as we build incrementally and work iteratively, but we can't have that flexibility to adjust if we don't have clear direction. So adaptability and responsiveness, being able to adapt and respond and make the necessary changes. Alignment and cohesion, from top to bottom, from left to right, we want to be properly aligned, and leaders' intent and OKRs work together to do just that. So leaders' intent is, when communicated, ensures that all team members understand the broader mission and vision. With OKRs, we're able to align individuals based on our objectives and our goals within the organization, knowing our mission, and that creates cohesion. So implementing OKRs in the leader's intent culture. So now we speak to somewhat of the softer side of leadership. So what are some steps that we can take? Think of this as a mini action plan. So if I'm listening to this right now, I'm thinking about my work context, how we can synergistically combine leaders' intent with OKRs and the action steps that I can take or we can take as a team to achieve that. The first thing we want to do is define our leader's intent or your leader's intent. Maybe that's at the team level, in your program, your department, at the executive senior level of the organization, wherever that is, or wherever you and your team are. That begins with clearly articulating the leader's vision, purpose, and desired state to ensure that the intent is communicated throughout the organization, whether, again, that's your team, whatever level, you're in a cross-functional team with many teams working together. We want to align OKRs with the leader's intent. So when we're writing, not even just drafting our OKRs, but when we're brainstorming our OKRs, we are thinking about that against what the leader's intent is. So once it's been properly defined and articulated, we are brainstorming and drafting and developing our OKRs with that leader's intent in mind. Next, oh, my screen is sticking here. Next, we want to communicate and facilitate those OKRs. So in a sense, we're wanting to, not that we're necessarily adopting a cascading or top-down culture, but we do want to cascade our strategic OKRs across the entire organization with the emphasis on how these OKRs connect with the leader's intent. How do they connect with the mission, the vision, the purpose, and strategy of the organization at all levels? And we also, as I mentioned earlier, we want to establish a common language across the organization. How do we do that? Well, every organization has its own buzzwords, its own keywords, its own things that we say and do. Why not bring that into our OKRs? Our OKRs don't have to be highly technical. They don't have to sound, smart. You don't have to try to make them fancy. We want to use common, plain, everyday, ordinary language, but we want to use our own common language as much as possible. Why? Because for one, that's a part of our identity, the way that we communicate, but also that contributes to shared understanding, right? If we have a common language, a common purpose, together we now have shared understanding and everyone is aligned and on the same page. This in turn empowers individuals. With that, we want to encourage autonomy. Mr. Marquette, he did that by having his people say, instead of receiving orders, when you're reporting to your leader or communicating with your leader, they're starting with, I intend to. Now that's what he did. Maybe there's something else that you can do to create that common language and also establish customs and traditions within your organization so you're operating more like an organism. We also want to provide the necessary resources and support to facilitate that success, because if we don't, it's just talk. What if we're saying that we're empowering autonomy, but we're not giving our folks space and we're not providing them with the necessary resources to do what they need to do and get it done? We want to have regular check-ins and feedback. Now, this is Agile People Ops framework, so that means we are agile. We do things the agile way. So we want to work incrementally, right? Meaning we're building and improving and building and improving over time, but over time, we're being iterative, right? So that means that we're going to be on a regular cadence of working and look backs, conducting retrospectives, seeing what we did wrong, what we did right, taking that feedback, that insight, and implementing it into the next iteration. We want to use those types of retrospectives to reinforce the connection between OKRs and the leader's intent. Adjusting and adapting. So we want to be flexible in adjusting our OKRs based on that feedback and the changing circumstances. And also we want to ensure that any adjustments that we make are still aligned with the overarching leader's intent. That means us, in part of our retro and our reflection activities, we are reflecting against the leader's intent to ensure alignment. And as leaders, in those retrospectives, we are reinforcing and emphasizing our intent to ensure that alignment as well. So there's a two-way symbiotic leadership relationship, leadership-based or leadership intent-based relationship that's taking place from the leader and their subordinates and vice versa, in order to ensure overall alignment. And if it sounds redundant, it might be for a reason, because it's about alignment, cohesion, collaboration, all of those things that we hear about all the time and talk about in these spaces, but really bringing them to life through these two concepts, OKRs and leaders' intent. And lastly, with implementing OKRs and a leader's intent and culture, celebrate success and learn from failure. So we're not just conducting our reviews and retrospectives and taking it and moving forward in the next iteration. We're going to celebrate achievements. It's kind of hard to motivate people and inspire people if we're not patting them on the back, letting people know that they've done a good job, but also telling ourselves that we've done a good job. And continuous improvement, fostering a culture of continuous improvement. Again, acknowledging our success and celebrating is a part of just that, fostering that culture, but also making sure that we are making action steps, action plans, and we're taking action when we conduct those retrospectives and we're drafting our new set of OKRs. We are then moving forward by drafting those OKRs with the leader's intent in mind, and also grafting in any new insights, any critical feedback, so that we're building on it in the next iteration and ensuring that we're improving progressively and successively with each following iteration. So that would be our action plan. Above all, the one thing that we want to walk away with, the one thing that we want to do is live with intent. Everything here is about intention. We can learn how to write OKRs. We can learn how to develop OKRs and make them look good and sound good, but it's the doing that matters. And that takes being intentional. While OKRs themselves by nature are intentional, humans have to act. And that action requires leadership, more specifically, intentional leadership that is about doing by empowerment, not by force or by mandates. So I was trying to time box us to an hour, but we're just slightly over. I want us to take a moment to reflect on this learning experience, but also what your own personal experience, thinking about your work context or even your personal context, and think of a creative book title. Develop a title that represents what you've learned in this session. So we're going to use the mural and the chat. This is just a quick retrospective activity. Let me see. Should have done this. If there's folks who can't find me, I'm right here in the mural. If you're using the chat, very simple. Write out a title as if you're a book author based on today's learning. I'm going to start our timer here again for 2 minutes. I'm going to give us some background music and some space. I'm going to monitor our chat. Now you're the author. So if you're in the mural once again, after you've reflected and thought about it, please drop a sticky note. If you're in the chat, I already have one. And this is a retrospective activity. Instead of just a flat retro where we just leave our thoughts, I want you to think of yourself as writing your thoughts as a book title. Right, let's kill our music. And I do have a couple of responses in the chat. Thank you for that. Lucas says, have the intent to be an intent leader. I like that. Thank you, Lucas. Jennifer says, how leaders can use intent to create OKRs to achieve organizational goals. That's great. And Kaveri, intentional impact. Hold on, I missed it. There is guides, intentional impact, guide to effective OKR implementation. All right. And Manango, the relationship between an intent leader and OKRs. Love it. And I don't want to mess up any names because I'm horrible with names, but I like this though. I like the title here. Cascading OKRs is a method of connecting company-wide goals to individual, team, and employee objectives. And I couldn't have said it better myself. So my last thing from you all, and I'm going to place us in private mode here in the mural to do this. Looking for feedback from you all. I have some sticky notes laid out here for you. I'm actually going to place us in private mode. And trying to avoid some of my background noise. Forgive me. So yeah, I put us in private mode so that you feel free to leave your honest feedback, and that way I will not see who left any feedback. If there's anything that you want to leave in the chat for me to like leave with and hold on to, you know, you're my customer right now. However I can improve, I'm always looking for new insights, new ideas, and new ways to improve. So if you want to drop a note as we're concluding this session for today, whether here on the mural board or in the chat, or if you want to verbalize, I'm going to remain online with us for maybe the next 5 or 10 minutes if folks want to engage in any discussion about today's topic in any way. So yeah, outside of that, I appreciate everyone joining. If you have to go, or if it's that time for you, by all means, I'm not going to hold you, but I'm just going to stand by and stay in place for anyone who wants to drop a note, again, in the mural or the chat, or wants to have a quick discussion. I'm here for it.
Hello, Vincent. So while they're giving their feedback, is it okay if they also come up with questions if they would have?
Absolutely. That does include any questions. Thank you for that, Jennifer. I'm seeing your comment there. If there are any questions, whether they be about OKRs or the idea of leaders' intent. I'm also, just for good measure, going to repost Kate's presentation on OKRs. It's there for you in the chat. Right. I'm not getting any questions. How did things look for you there, Mariana? Sounds like it might be time for us to close out in that case.
Do we have any audience questions? I can see a lot of feedback in the chat box.
Mhm. Thank you there, Lucas.
And Kate mentioned to me that she had to drop off because she was getting late. So she
Mhm.
said that the session was fabulous
Mhm.
and she just wanted to pass on the message.
Awesome, awesome. Definitely appreciate that. Appreciate you, Nathaniel. All right. Good stuff. All right. Well, it sounds like well, no, forgive me. There's maybe a few more pieces of insight there in the chat. Yep. Thank you all who dropped a few notes. I'll be sure to capture these and process for our next installment, whenever that is. So stay tuned. Just keep in mind, whether you're running OKRs or not, leadership is always a thing, regardless of your station in life, regardless of the industry you work in, or what type of organization you work in, how your org is structured. As for OKRs specifically, again, you might not be running OKRs, but it's still important to set goals. If you're setting any kind of goal, you have to set it with intention. I highly recommend adopting OKRs. And if you're looking for some basics, do check out Kate's video to get get some ideas. And I'm always available on LinkedIn. So, in fact, one of the things I should have done was shared my LinkedIn. Well, you all registered for the course, so you should see my name. So by all means, I welcome folks reaching out and friending me, connecting with me on LinkedIn. And if you want to continue any conversations or, looking for any kind of coaching for OKRs, I am here for that as well. Shout out to Agile People Ops Framework for allowing me this time and putting on the discussion. And yeah, I'll end there. And greatly appreciate the time.
Thank you, Vincent. And while we wait for audience comments, I would like to add on to everybody's appreciation by saying that it was a wonderful session, and I'm sure everybody had lots to learn from this. It was very engaging. It was something new for me as well, new role. So I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much. We will also share a feedback form link in the chat box. Would request you all to share your feedback. So moving ahead, we have an upcoming coaching course, the APF Certified Coaching Professional, which is an accredited international coaching federation training program that meets the educational requirements for an ICF ACES credential. The program is scheduled from August 12th to February 3rd, 2025, every Monday from 9 a.m. to 11 EST New York time. If interested, you can check out the website link and save down the discount code, which will be shared in the chat box. So what do we have next? We have an upcoming Coaching Communities of Practices event scheduled on August 15th. Join speaker Sonam, where you will create your own definition of resilience, understand how to rebound using the 3 Ps, become more confident in your strengths, and get ready to practice and master resilience even in the face of challenges. To register for this event, kindly scan the QR code below or join using the link shared in the chat box. Additionally, you all can join our global community and USA community group. Kindly scan the QR code or join using the link shared in the chat box. We also have a community platform to collaborate and engage with other passionate individuals. You all can join using the link shared in the chat box. So thank you all once again for joining us and for learning and growing with us. We will share the recording to all those who registered. Thank you all. I am Ariana, your host, will be signing off for today. Bye-bye.